Hey guys, this is FitDread, and I wanted to do another review. I had a lot of fun with the Z Fold 2 review, so I wanted to do another one. This is a review for the M1 MacBook Pro. And the thing about the M1 MacBook Pro is, it's not for everybody, but I think it is really, really good. And I just want to go over that with you now, just off the cuff, no script, just give you my opinions on it. And yeah, so first things first, why did I get the M1 MacBook Pro? Well, I had a 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I loved it. You know, the 16-inch MacBook Pro was my favorite device. Uh, you know, I'd say of early last year. You know, I picked it up to replace a Surface Book 2, which was a really cool device, but it had software problems. Microsoft just didn't really nail it. So for me, I wanted to go over to see what Apple had in store with the new MacBook Pro. Everyone loved the 16-inch MacBook Pro so much that I went ahead and bought it. So I went from the 16-inch MacBook Pro, and I ended up buying this. Which is crazy because I went from one excellent device to this one to replace it. So why did I do that? And what do I think about this device in general? Well, first off, if you have the 16-inch MacBook Pro, you're probably going to love this, with some exceptions. The exceptions being if you really relied on the dedicated graphics of the 16-inch MacBook Pro, then yeah, maybe you don't love this as much, because obviously the dedicated graphics chip in the 16-inch MacBook Pro would beat this, right? Just from a horsepower perspective, like if you're a gamer and you really want the highest graphics at every other expense, then of course you're going to pick the 16-inch. Obviously if you're a gamer, you're probably going to be on a Windows device. But I definitely do some casual gaming on this. And I actually really enjoy it. But that's the one exception, okay? With every other metric, I think this sort of wins for me. Because the battery life, okay? The battery life on this device is unreal, okay? The M1 obviously is a new chip. It's their Apple Silicon chip. It's leaving Intel behind. It's going in a new direction. Let's go ARM. ARM CPUs instead of, and everyone's seen everything online about this, right? Oh, they're moving from Intel, they're going to their Apple Silicon, ARM chips, it's going to be a big deal, and I knew it was going to be a big deal. So, I knew it was going to be a huge deal, and I knew Apple could either ruin it or they could do it well, and honestly, I was expecting it to be bad. Anytime you go from one architecture to another, I knew there's like a bumpy road that they have to go across, and Apple really nailed it because what they did was, you've seen everything with Rosetta 2, right? Rosetta 2 is like the translation layer to interpret ARM instruction set to interpret the Intel instruction set onto their ARM Apple Silicon chips, and they really, really do it well. Because for the most part, it's seamless and transparent. I could use, I could be using Intel or ARM-based applications and really just don't notice one way or the other. All I know is I'm feeling the speed. I'm feeling the battery life improvements. I'll tell you what really did it for me, because I'm somebody that uses my MacBook as a content consumption device for the most part. So that means I don't really need it to do too much, except, when it comes to that, it's not really demanding, right? YouTube videos, whatever, if I'm, watching that stuff, battery life is probably your biggest metric that's going to hold you back. Not really performance, because really anything can web browse. A Chromebook can web browse, right? Even if it's terrible, but it can do it. This device, you knew it was going to do all those things, those casual things very well, right? But you don't pay this big money to do just casual things. I want to be able to do pro level stuff if I want to do it. I'm somebody that likes the capability to do everything on my laptop if the need arises. And I'd say The M1 does that stuff really, really well. The only thing it doesn't have is boot camp support, which I really never really used too much on the 16-inch MacBook Pro, but I did have Windows 10 installed for the occasion where I couldn't get something to work on Mac and I just wanted something to work. For example, Valorant. When my friends were playing Valorant and I went over to my buddy's house with my laptop, they didn't have a Mac client, and I was like, okay, well, I want to play with you guys right now. I booted into Windows, I installed Valorant, and then I was playing. But that's not something you can really do on this device. So you kind of gotta understand that this device has those limitations. And for the most part, it's not going to be a problem. For me personally, this is just personal. If I want to do something, like say I want to play a Windows game, what I'll do is I'll use Steam streaming, and I'll stream the Windows game from my Windows PC to this, right? So I'm able to play my game just fine on this with Steam Remote, and I'm actually very impressed with how well that works. But if you're out and about, you obviously can't do that. Like if you're on travel or whatever, you can make it work where you can stream to your hotel room from your house, but that's really not a good idea once you start looking into latency and stuff. So what can this machine do on its own, right? It can do a hell of a lot. If you have, like, for example, I'm a big World of Warcraft gamer. I've been doing raids and stuff, okay? Okay, World of Warcraft. So just on World of Warcraft alone, you can't really max settings out on this, right? So you're playing with, like, medium, but and honestly, that's fine, right? Like you could max the settings out a little bit more on the 16-inch MacBook Pro, right? So if you really cared about that extra performance, then yeah, you're gonna go with the 16. But guys, I had the 16 and I put it next to my wife's MacBook Air because I got her the M1 MacBook Air, and then I loved it so much that I got myself the M1 MacBook Pro. Okay, her MacBook Air versus the 16-inch MacBook Pro, okay, I mean, it has the same chip. The MacBook Air, M1 MacBook Air, has the same M1 chip, right, as the Pro. Obviously, it throttles, but I was just so impressed with the battery life. I'm talking while gaming, because what I did was I was gaming with the 16. I had World of Warcraft up, and I had it. I logged into my wife's account on the M1 machine. So I did a little side-by-side. And what I noticed was the M1 device could last like 3 to 4 times as long as the 16-inch. The 16-inch would be dead within the hour. And then the M1 device could last like 2 hours, 3 hours, just like playing the game. And I was like, okay, wow. And I mean, I'm not recalling the specifics of the test right now. I had everything written down. But it just blew the 16-inch. And the 16-inch MacBook Pro, everyone loved the battery in that. Everyone loved the battery. They were like the battery life because they had the maximum capacity possible, legally allowed to fly on a United States plane without any kind of weirdness, right? Like to bring it on a carry-on. Like it was like 100 or 90 watt hour something battery. It was like the beefiest battery they could put in there. And obviously the Mac is super efficient. So everyone loved the battery, but guess what? As soon as you start using the dedicated graphics chip in the 16-inch, your battery life's going to go away. And if you're on the Intel integrated graphics, suddenly you're not able to do much because you're going to be held back by those Intel integrated graphics. So a lot of times you're trying to use dedicated. The problem with dedicated is as soon as you go to dedicated graphics, your fans are going to kick in because it's going to get loud, it's going to get hot, okay? It's going to get loud, hot, and battery life's going to go down the drain. All of a sudden your cons just come like flying in, okay? But with the M1 devices, the cons never really come, okay? That's what's so cool about the M1 devices. The MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro, to me, these devices have the least compromises out of any device that I've used, okay? It's portable, right? This 13-inch is so portable, and it's got amazing power. If you have a device that's optimized I mean, it's just going to feel so fast. It's going to be great. You're going to love that. And I mean, I have a really hard time, and I know I'm gushing about this. A lot of people have. And like, I'm a tech guy. So let me just tell you, as a tech guy, I sort of understood that there might be some weirdness with getting a new device, and there might be some weirdness with software. Like, you might have to mess with things to get things to work, and I've had to do that a couple times. For example, I tried to get like Dwarf Fortress to work, which is like a super weird game that it's got like a small cult following, and I wanted to play it, and they did have a Mac sort of client. But it took me a long time to get it to work, and I did get it to work. But really, that's not really the fault of the M1 so much, because I have a feeling that that game really didn't run like correctly on a regular Mac. But that's stuff that I had to deal with. That's like just a weird one-off situation. But I was able to get it to work. And like, for the most part, all my software that I use, like my pro level software, has transitioned to have native support. Like, I use DaVinci Resolve. I don't know if I'm on the beta or if it's actually the full version now that's out of testing, but the version I'm running has full M1 support. Capture One has full M1 support. Affinity Photo. I'm pretty sure Clip Studio Paint. All these things have. I'm pretty sure Affinity Photo, but they have. I'm pretty sure M1 support now with all these big players, and that's great. Okay, so all these, and even when they didn't have official M1 support, I was having a decent time on these applications with just the Intel versions. I mean, that's pretty cool. So you're gonna get amazing performance out of these machines. Do I think it's for everybody? I honestly, I want to say yes, but there's always going to be the couple. I'd say, like, for most people, like 90% of people that need a laptop, this could work for you. The only people that wouldn't want a device like this, if you're really tied into the Microsoft ecosystem with Windows and you really need that, okay, then you're probably not going to go for this. There's no boot camp support, okay? If you're a gamer, okay, you might not go for this because you want something that has that software compatibility, right? Which is really Windows. Like, Windows is what you game on, right? But for somebody like me that uses this as a secondary device, that already has a Windows desktop that will play your games, and you want something auxiliary, that maybe you want to use it on the go, and you want something that's just got great battery life, great performance, and it's honestly in a nice, sexy package, because, MacBooks are really nice. Like, hardware, this is really nice, okay? If you want something that's super nice for a secondary device, this is a big win. And if you get the Air, that's a great value, because at $800 and then less than that, if you can get like maybe a student discount or something, like the Air is honestly an amazing value. The performance you get out of the Air, and I mean, the only time you really need to step up to the Pro is if you're going to have sustained loads, okay? Because when do you have sustained loads? Hardly really ever. Like, if you're gaming, then yeah, a game is a sustained load on your graphics chip because your game is constantly being rendered, and that's going to cause your machine to throttle unless you have cooling. And the MacBook Pro has sufficient cooling. It has fans. I'm telling you, the fans on this, they do turn on. You can hear them, but they are so much quieter than the 16 that I cannot complain. This is the first laptop where I cannot complain about the acoustics. Like, I'm talking about the thermal, the fans. Like, they're just every other device. I don't care if it was the 16-inch MacBook Pro, the Surface Book 2, before that had Razer blades, okay? These laptops all ramp up and sound disgusting, okay? This is the first laptop that I've had that I'm like, dang, those fans, I can't even barely hear them, and this thing is 100% load, basically. And I'm just shocked at how well this thing cools. The Air will throttle. If you get the Air, It will throttle. I was playing World of Warcraft. After 10 or 15 minutes, my frame rate would dip. Okay, so I'm just saying, sustained loads, you're gonna want the Pro. But if you're just somebody that is gonna do light to like light gaming applications that don't like peg your CPU at 100% at all times, then it may be worth it to get the Air. I'm not saying that the Air can beat the Pro, right? In value, 100%. It beats the Pro. But it's just, you need to consider the Pro if you want a couple things. For me, what did it was the screen brightness. I like bright screens. And this has like 100 more nits on the Air, plus bigger battery. Okay, that's a big win. I like longer battery. Even though the Air has great battery, this is going to have even better battery. Okay, so battery, screen brightness, and obviously this thing has a fan, so it does not throttle like the Air does. So big wins for me, and it was worth the extra money. But not everybody can afford the Pro. Not everybody wants the Pro, and the Air is a great alternative. So really, if you don't need the Pro, the Air might be for you. Okay, so are there cons? Like, there are cons. I think there's a lot of really cool pros that I've been talking about. Obviously, the speed, the thermals, the battery life. Those are your absolute big wins with the M1 MacBook Pro and the MacBook Air. Cons is going to be obviously, does your software run on it? Are you a professional that uses this for work and you need to have something that you rely on? A lot of people say don't go to the M1 yet. Don't do it yet because you're going to, hold on, you probably heard that Outlook. But like, don't do it yet if you absolutely need something to rely on. Like, maybe it's not quite baked yet. But if you have enough software and technical know-how to get around those hurdles whenever you run into them, this is 100% going to be worth it. For me, I knew that I would be able to work around any problems that I might have with this, and I have. I've worked around every single problem, and it's been 100% worth it for me. So, yeah. That's all I really had to say about the M1 MacBook Pro, and I'd love to answer your comments if you have any. So leave them down below, and yeah, 10 out of 10. I'll see you guys in the next one.